All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another session of ours. Welcome to hashtag YPC Talk Tuesdays. I think if you've been part of the series since from the start, you know that we bring it on, and it's always getting better and better. You know, we're stepping up. Today we have Refentse Molehe as well as Ntato Rabushaka that will be giving us their talks. Just a brief background in case you're not sure what YPC Tuesdays are about. It's a platform where we give you to come and share your presentations. So it can be presentation style where you actually have your PowerPoint presentation and then you give your talk. Alternatively, it can be freestyle, so without any need for a presentation in the background. And the aim obviously is to allow you to give the platform to share your knowledge, share your experiences. Most importantly, also use the platform to master your presentation skills, but most importantly, give you the platform to come and show off your skills as well. So there's going to be a different, there's about 3 different series that we hold. So it's the YPC Talk Tuesdays, which are every Tuesday for the month of September, and we'll move into October. We have a series also that looks at knowledge sharing workshops. So with that specific one, that's when we trying to impart skills to you as our YPC and SAIMM members. And then the third one, it's where we have interviews with industrial experts in the industry, if I may put it that way. Again, there we're trying to now connect you with these experts, leading people within the mining and minerals industry, so that we can learn from them, because then whatever knowledge that they've gathered over the years, we can definitely impart from them during that interview session. So to get us started, I'll first introduce Refentse. In terms of how things will go, you can actually engage with us in the chat. If you have any questions, please put them through in the Q&A. And after Refentse's presentation, we can then address some of those questions. Ultimately, towards the end, we'll still get to engage further with regards to any questions that you might have for Refentse, as well as for Ntato. So a short background on Refentse. She has experience in the chrome, iron ore, and manganese ore. She has strength in research and development, plant optimization, and plant flow sheet development. Her interest and current focus on business development, new product development, technical commercialization, sales, and marketing. And yeah, she's one of those people that create awesome content, YouTuber, you know, that social person. So yeah, I'd like to give the floor up to Refentse.
Thank you so much, Wesley. Good evening to everybody. I hope I'm audible. My name is Refentse Molehe, as Wesley has mentioned. So I am a process engineer and I work for Multitech. I have been part of Multitech for the last 5 years, but they've been my bursary company as well for 2 years. So in general, for 7 years. And my approach in today's presentation of sharing the importance of a 5-year plan is really very much sharing my own journey of what I have done for my first year, since my first year of working, which was 2016, to what is 2020 this year. So by the end of this year, it's going to be 5 whole years working as a process, or rather as working in the mining industry. I think the first thing I want to highlight is that I have been very much intentional about having a 5-year plan from my first year of working, and hence why I'm very adamant in sharing my own personal journey. So how I have approached it is that I have themed every year of my 5 years working, and I have titled it, and I want to share my own personal experience for each year. So yes, for my first year, I named it Raise Your Hand. So when I started working, firstly, let's start a little bit of context. I started studying chemical engineering, and after my second year, I kind of knew that most probably this is not what I want to do. So I ended up switching to metallurgical engineering. So I studied at the University of Pretoria. I ended up switching to metallurgical engineering, And based on the modules that were available, I had to add another 4 years. So it took me generally 6 years to get a 4-year degree, which is engineering. So when I started working, because I had failed numerous modules between my first year and my second year, studying chemical engineering, I really went into my first year of working feeling already like a failure. I really felt that every time when I did not understand something, every time when I was expected to execute on something, I always thought in my head, oh my goodness, it's definitely because I failed like some random module from first year and I repeated it. So there was obviously that insecurity in me going into my first year, that all the modules that I had failed kind of contributed to why I was in my head thinking that I was not doing well. So going back to year one, which was raise your hand, at some point as well, I started, my first year of working, I started with another colleague of mine. He came from VIS, and he got all the amazing projects, and he's male. Let's first start with his male. So he got all the amazing projects, but later on, I realized that he got all the heavy duty projects, and I ended up getting things that were very much a lot of data capturing and all these things. And I really thought it was because they were discriminating against me, like I was not their favorite child type of thing. But then one day I decided that when the next project comes, I'm definitely going to raise my hand for the project that I want, because I realized that through doing certain projects, you learned more, because your first year of working as an engineer or any field, it is your year where you commit to learning. And I felt I was not learning enough. And my counter, which my other colleague, he was learning a lot more than me. So a project came in and I raised my hand. I'm like, I want to do this project. Everyone was so concerned because, you know, firstly, I'm very girly. Another thing is that at that time I was super tiny. So I think everyone was concerned, how will I end up being able to run this project, because it required like big machinery. And everyone was so supportive. And I think what I realized is that I wasn't getting those projects not because I was being discriminated or I was not the favorite child, but everyone was so gentle with me because I was a female. So when you get into the workplace, you actually realize it came out of a place of love, of them saying, okay, no, don't do all the heavy things, you can do this. But not because they didn't want me to grow, but I realized that actually limited my growth. And all I had to do was raise my hand. So I think in your first year of working, one of the most important things is to allow yourself to raise your hand and put yourself forward. Another thing is getting a mentor. So for me, I was able to get a mentor through SAIMM. I had joined in my first year working. So firstly, I want to encourage you to join this organization if you have not already. And I was able to learn so much from him. A lot of times when there's conflict at work, or I, in inverted commas, got into trouble, I always called him to say, okay, this is the situation, how do I address it? And he was able to guide me through everything. Another thing as well he encouraged me to do is to have a career development plan. And from that, I realized that I was more intentional of how I went about my life, and hence why I was able to today have accomplished everything I had set out from my first year of working. So get a mentor is very important, and have a career plan, and join organizations such as SAIMM. This is not a paid ad. They didn't ask me to say this, but this is from my own lived experience, that joining such councils actually help you in growing your career. The next thing I did as well in my first year is that I really committed my first year of working. I dedicated it to understanding what this industry is about, what is actually available out there. Because what I realized very early on is that I do not know what kind of opportunities there are. I just knew there's certain jobs within the company I worked for. But I committed that, you know what, any conference that's available and I'm able to go, and maybe the company is willing to pay for anything that's free breakfast, because there's a lot of free breakfast as well from different organizations, I'm going to attend. And you meet different people and you're actually exposed to what kind of careers are out there, and you get involved. Because if you do not expose yourself to what's out there, you always have a narrow mind of what you can actually accomplish. Moving on to year two, I named it Be Patient. So my graduate program with the company I work for, it was supposed to last for a year. And worst case scenario, it was supposed to last for a year and a half. By the time a year and a half came around, there were no other job opportunities, or people were not resigning and people were not getting fired or quitting. So there was no space for me to move into any other position. So I had to stay put, and I couldn't go to another company because I had a bursary with them. So I had to stay put. And what resulted from that was that I started dragging my feet. I got very discouraged because I felt like the work that I was doing, I knew it. And the problem as well is that I felt that a lot of the work I was doing in my workspace kind of was similar to what I was doing in back work. So I felt like I was no longer being challenged. But what I did, I decided to drag my feet. I took forever to write reports. Oh my gosh, anything you can think of. I was just very, very negative because I felt like I wasn't growing, especially when you're watching all your peers outside from different companies that you graduate with who are progressing and you feel stagnant. And at that time, I saw the position as if I'm still doing back work. So I really did not give my best. Like I said, I dragged my feet. But in that moment, I realized that me dragging my feet, it's a disadvantage to me, not to the company. You think you're cheating the company, you do bare minimum, but you're actually cheating yourself. So what I ended up doing is that I really kind of got myself acquainted with the people in my company. And I started asking, again, going back to your one of raising your hand, I started asking for opportunities. So I already felt that I wasn't challenged enough. So a lot of the projects that I was involved with, I'll look for areas where it could be, I don't know how to explain it, but let's say we did test work and we do equipment. So there's a thing called a spiral. If you in the metallurgy space, you'll be familiar with it. And with the spiral, I knew that I just did a project for silica sand. And I spoke to one of the managers in the company. I was just telling him, it would be so great to actually test this out at a plant. And he had connections, and he actually connected me with one of the guys from one of the plants. And that's how I ended up spending 3 months at a silica plant. And I realized, all I have to do is ask for an opportunity. I started asking for more opportunities. So I ended up working on another project in the Rustenburg area for chrome. I worked for another one in Witbank for coal. And that's how I started getting all these opportunities, by simply raising my hand and also not dragging my feet. So yeah, you need to have that switch. Moving on to year 3, I named it You're Not a Quota. So before we get to me naming it You're Not a Quota, a little bit of context as well is that after, again, it was 2 years now being an EIT, where the program was supposed to last for a year. Now at this point, it was 2.5 years of me being an EIT, something that was supposed to only last for a year. And so I was like, you know what? Nothing's going to change unless I change my plan. So I went through my career development plan. And what I realized in my career development plan that I had in my first year, my plan was to just do my EIT program. But there was no plan thereafter. So I sat down and I asked a lot of people who were senior to me at that time, other process engineers as well. At that time, I was still in EIT. And I actually had a conversation with them, asking them, okay, so what's my next move? What typically comes out of this? And we started drawing down a career plan. What ended up happening as well, again, going back to asking for opportunities, all the projects that I raised my hand and insisted and fought for was projects that were aligned with the career plan of moving into becoming a process engineer. So in my company, like I said, we sell different equipment. So for all the equipment, you can become a process engineer for that. And I knew that the one area that always had opportunities, where there's always space, is the gravity division, where it sells spirals. So I was like, okay, I've never done a project in spirals, so I really want to get involved in that. So in my 3rd year, so I started doing a lot of projects in that. And then finally an opportunity became open, where I got interviewed to become a process engineer. So I got the opportunity and I was so ecstatic, because I kid you not, let's say 2 months after I was intentional about revamping my career plan, I actually moved into becoming a process engineer. There's something that happens when you tell yourself and you commit in your heart, this is what you want to do. The universe just starts conspiring in your favor, but also you need to act upon it. And that's what I started doing. So even in my interviews, when they asked me, what's your favorite project that you've been involved with for Spirals? Remember, I work for a test work department, so we were exposed to all the different equipment. And I was able to highlight the one project that I did a few months ago. So I had experience in all the equipment except for this specific equipment that was for the department where there was an opening. And I really committed myself to understanding everything about that project. Going into the interview, I was so fluent in it because I had really invested so much time in understanding the project and making sure that it actually excels. So moving on to why I named year 3, You're Not a Quota. So when I got the job opportunity, one of my colleagues as well applied for the same position, but he had more years of experience. He had been part of Multitech for longer. And I know for a fact, somehow it got to my ear that, and he actually did say it to me as well, that he felt that I only got the job because I was Black and I was female. So I was so offended about that. But when I started working again, this was my insecurity. The same way in my first year of working, me failing all those modules was an insecurity. This became an insecurity. I'm like, oh, so I'm not good enough. They only placed me there because I'm just a quota. And I had this cloud hanging over my head. So in the first few days of working, my manager called me into his office and he asked me, how is everything going? And I explained to him, no, it's going great. I'm really happy to be part of the team. And he said to me, Refentse, let me explain to you why I actually selected you. I didn't ask him, he just voluntarily explained why. And you know, in that moment, I just got that I'm not really a quota. So a lot of times our race, our gender, our age becomes a limiting factor to what we feel personally we can do. And going into your career, this is something you always need to remember, that even regardless of how you got the position, but do it ethically. Regardless of how you got the position, once you're in that position, it is your responsibility to outperform and to do your best, because every last work that you do speaks for you and creates more opportunities for you. So I think having him explain to me why I actually got the position kind of reassured me that I am deserving of this position. But for some reason, feeling like I was just a quota, I actually forgot all the 3 years of me working up to that position. It didn't just happen. I was very intentional about it. But for some reason, someone's words actually discouraged me and made me feel like I do not deserve it. But I can understand, because they were also hurt because they wanted the opportunity. But also another important thing when you're moving through your career, just, I always say this, drink your water and mind your own business. So don't ever get involved in people's politics. Don't get involved in people's dramas. Just do your work. Somehow you're going to find yourself in the middle of it all. It is none of your business. You are there to add value to your team, and that's what you need to continuously focus on. And that's what I carried through that whole experience. Moving on to year 4. Year 4, I named it Keep Learning. So it had been almost just over a year of me being a process engineer. And again, I went back to my career development plan. I was saying, okay, so what is my next move? Because I knew that I do not necessarily want to be a process engineer for the rest of my life. And a lot of times the path that I've realized with other people is that once they become a process engineer, they move into becoming a specialist. After 4 years of working, you kind of know what you like and what you don't like. And I knew that me becoming a specialist is something that I know I'll be great at, but it's not something that I'm passionate about. So I took the time again, going back to what can I do with career, or rather studying, that I can actually contribute to me moving into the direction that I want, which is business development, or like business development for the company. So then I spoke again to my mentor, who I got in 2016. We're still in touch, even though he's not that involved anymore in my career. But I explained to him, I want to move into this direction, and he advised me again on how I can go about it academically. And that's how I ended up doing my honors in technology and engineering management with the University of Pretoria. And now this year I'll be finishing off my master's in technology and innovations management, again as well with University of Pretoria. So I'm very patriotic to the University of Pretoria. And yeah, so I realized that you need to keep learning. I think a lot of times what people do is that they become very comfortable with where they are with their lives. And I realized as well, as you keep moving up, it's not enough to just say that I have my undergrad, because a lot of people have their undergrad. It's not enough to say I have 5 years of experience. So the competition is becoming very, very stiff. So you kind of need to decide which way you're going. You know, it's not always possible to go the university or institution or the tertiary route, but you need to keep learning and keep upgrading your information, because like I said, it will not always be enough to actually just have your undergrad. You need to know more, because when you know more, you can add more to the team and add value to your team. So yes, another thing about year 4 that was very important for me is things that I felt were important in my life. And again, it goes back to living a life of service. And this is something that I have committed myself to doing. And so I started my own conference, Boss Babe Conference, where I invite different females from different walks of life in different fields, where we have a day where there's different speakers and we interact with each other. And through that, you know, I've really seen how we've created a community of very strong women. We started getting involved more guys, but yeah, the intention is not necessarily for guys. But as well, I started doing a lot of charity initiatives with my twin sister, where we have a shoe drive. So what I want to say, what I'm trying to highlight about year 4 is to keep learning, but to look outside your career. What are the things that you're passionate about? What do you want to contribute in this world? And also make memories. This is something that I always tell people. It's like, it's important to also be career driven, because if you know where you're going, then if you're intentional about how you carry your life and how you move with your career, you always get to where you plan to go. But also make memories. You know, it's not the same as in tertiary, where all we did was study. So I really devoted a lot to traveling. I traveled a lot of different provinces in South Africa. So I did my last province last year. So enjoy life, you know, and if you have an opportunity to work, enjoy your salary. Don't let it be invested in only, like, I don't know, just, yeah, serious things. So keep learning and enjoy the journey. Year 5, which is the last year again, for me, year 5, I called it What's Next. And it's because it's like, again, like I mentioned, I went back to my career development plan and I thought to myself, okay, so I have been a process engineer. Where do I want to move into next? And one thing I've learned, again, is that a lot of people feel that they're not growing in their careers. But one thing I've learned in these last 5 years is that so many people are 9 to 5 people. So don't call me before 9, don't call me after 5. And that actually creates a lot of opportunity. If you really feel that you want to grow in your career, that creates an opportunity for you to move ahead. Because the things they're not willing to do, you can take it on upon yourself to do them. And that actually makes you stand out. But more than anything, it gives you an opportunity to learn and to grow and to add more skills. Linking it up with skills as well. It's so important, like I said, to keep acquiring as much knowledge as possible, but also understand what skills do you already have, what are you passionate about, what do you enjoy doing? Because remember that whatever career direction you choose, this is something you're going to have to do for the next, I don't know, like, you know, if you decide to retire 65. So let it be something that you're passionate about. Another advantage of having a career development plan as well is that when you're looking for jobs, I've seen this with people as well, say, when you're looking for a job, you just take everything, you apply to everything. Yes, there's circumstances where you can find yourself just applying for everything because you need to get a job. But as well, when you are clear on what you actually want to do with your future, you start approaching the right people, you start being in the right circles, you start associating yourself with the right people, you start knowing which companies you need to approach when you're looking for a job, which people or what kind of people you need to speak to. So if you're not clear on what is your next ideal position, it's so hard for you to actually maneuver or to know which direction to go, because you just all over the place, taking whatever that is available. But then when you're very clear on what's your next best position, and there's something you always have to ask yourself, what's my next best ideal position? Then it's easier for you to move. Going back to also careers, I know like with COVID and everything, so many people find themselves jobless, but I want to highlight the power of social media. So for me, what Kondwani actually mentioned earlier on was that I'm involved in, I have my own YouTube channel. So when the pandemic started, I got very nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I actually get fired? What's next? So I sat down, I'm like, okay, so I know that social media is very powerful. What are the skills that I can offer? And I started my YouTube channel, and it has been growing ever since. So what I want to say is that understand the power that social media has. And I've seen people also convert social media into becoming a business for them. So one of my friends as well, she has a 9-to-5 job. She's a lawyer, and she started her own travel agency where she actually does all these traveling packages for people through social media. So I think being young people and having an understanding of social media, use it to your advantage. There's obviously highs and lows with social media, but there's so much benefits and so many opportunities come from social media. You just need to figure out how can you use it to your advantage. And yeah, the last thing I want to say is have a sponsor. As you're moving through the years, you realize in your first year of working, a mentor is very important. And when you have a mentor, you easily know how to maneuver and how to go about just this whole career thing and what's the right direction to go. But when you're in your first and second year of working, how you stand out is the person that works the hardest, the person that's willing to give their best. That person always stands out. But as you move up the ranks and as you move throughout the years, you actually realize that the jobs are becoming less and the skills required are also becoming very strict. So now what you need, why a sponsor is so important, is that you need a sponsor is someone that advocates for you in rooms that you are not in. So it's someone that's very influential. So you need a person that you know that do or die, they have made it their responsibility to see you grow. So this is the person where there's 5 TVs and what they do will be saying, okay, no, Refentse, I have worked with her, she's great, pick her. Because no, there's no one to vouch for the other 4. So having a sponsor is very important. I've done a YouTube channel in great detail about this, so it's quite a lengthy discussion. But yes, so in general, this is my 2 cents about having a 5-year plan and the importance of it. I don't know if there's anyone who has questions, but I always say that if you do not plan your life, you arrive at a place that is totally unplanned. And one day you will find that your friends are having these best lives, but then it's like, what about you? But the problem is that maybe you were not intentional. The plan won't always go accordingly, but if you just know what is your next best or ideal position, you start making moves aligned with that. So yes, that's all from me. I don't know if, yes, there's anything else that I need to contribute.
Awesome. Thank you for that presentation, Refentse. So there's a question from Gary Lane, and the question goes, I often hear people asking their employee or their employer what their career path is. Is this the right approach? And what would you recommend to a young person in terms of advancing their career?
Oh, okay. So to answer the first part of the question of people asking, I think it's the best thing to do. It is the right thing to do to ask people what is their career path. That is, it kind of creates a suggestion of how you can go about it. But what I also say as well is that how do I put this? Knowing their plan makes you see how you can go about it. It's a suggestion for how you can go about it, but that cannot be your plan because everyone is different. Everyone is brought on earth to do for a different purpose. So if I know someone is a specialist in this, then most probably I can go that path. If I can make an example with myself, in my second year, I spoke to one of the ladies who worked for us, one of the managers. She's a business development engineer or manager. And I told her, this is what I want to do. So she explained to me how she went about it. And it took her almost 30 years to work in the business development space. And I was like, there's no ways I'm taking 30 years to go into that space. So what I did was like, okay, these are the key things that are important about being a business development engineer. This is what she did. What can I do alternatively that will actually reap the same results? Because there's more opportunities. And what I've seen as well is that many people get into business development 4 or 3 years into it and not 20 years. The second part of the question, sorry, can you just repeat the second part of the question for me?
So the other question, no, there was, what would you recommend to a young person in terms of advancing their career?
Okay, so advancing their careers, I go back to having a mentor. That's very important. And again, having a sponsor, it's quite important. You need someone to speak for you. And lastly is to actually keep be clear on, like I said, be clear on what you feel is your next best ideal position. Let it be something that's aligned with you. Remember, a lot of people step into engineering or whatever field thinking in high school, this is what they want to do. So you need to know what is the next thing that you actually want to do. Do you want to change industries? Do you want to move into a different? So it's so important for you to know what are your strengths and keep upskilling yourself. So once you know what it is you want to do, then you actually are able to do all the different things in between then they can get you there. So I know a lot of my friends as well who were engineers are moving more into data science. So now they learning all the data science things and stuff. So you just need to know what's the next destination, and you start all these other things in between, you start moving towards them. Like when it comes to education, the kind of people you need to know, kind of companies you need to work for. So I think once you know where you want to go, all the things in between become more clear.
Awesome. So I'll take one more question for you. Then the ones that follow, we'll take them towards the end. So
Okay.
this is actually a follow-up from Offense. The question is it a good thing to choose your immediate boss as a mentor?
That's a tricky one. That's a very tricky one. So I think, let me say it like this: yes and no. The yes is yes, because you get to learn a lot from them, and because they work directly with you, it's so easy for them to guide you on how to go about in your current role, how to go about moving into different positions and everything of that. So that's my yes. So you can learn a lot from them, and they're able to influence or suggest how you can do your work better. But also another thing that you need to realize is that great managers, it's not all of them, great managers are willing to mentor you while you are in your current position, because their intention is to see you grow. It's not all of them, but great managers do that. So they indirectly become your mentor. So you can do that. But I would say, what I did, I didn't get my manager to be my mentor because of the fact that I felt like there's a little bit of, I just felt like, me personally, I felt uncomfortable with the fact that I had my other colleagues as well who were also, I don't know, because mentoring, it can become personal. So if you feel that you can become very open with them about your personal life, then go ahead. There are people who are willing to assist. But yeah, I'll say yes, if you feel they're the right alignment. Remember, when you get a mentor, it needs to be someone you can trust. Someone you can trust with personal things that you can ask, they can tell you, you can tell them personal things that's going on in your life, so they can have a full picture of how to advise you. So if you feel you can trust them, then yes, yeah, definitely they can be. But I would say there are many other people who also can be. You don't need one mentor. That's another thing that people mistake. You don't need one mentor. You can have multiple mentors, and that's what I had throughout my whole career. In my first year, I think I had 5 of them, yeah, in different levels. One who was retired, one who just was 3 years older than me, one who, so you can have as many mentors as you want, as long as it gets you to where you want to be.
Awesome. Thank you, Refentse.
Most
So
welcome.
now we'll go on to the next presenter, Tato J.R. Rabushaka. I think a fun fact, Tato is actually a chemical engineer as well, former VETSI. So yeah, in case you all don't catch it in his short biography. So yeah, Tato is a property analyst, giving insight to ordinary citizen on current property markets, breaking down current and incoming legislative requirements, the property sector, be easily understood. It touches key topics that link the current economic climate, the property sector for the public to make well-informed decisions. He also applies his trade in the property sector, servicing clients all across South Africa and delivering high-quality services to both property buyers and sellers. He's also the MD of Leate Property Consulting, focusing his teaching on how ordinary South Africans can build a property portfolio using investment concepts such as gearing and crowdfunding to buy property. He has given talks to university students and young professionals in corporate South Africa. So actually, what pops into mind, Tato, I'd like to put a challenge on you to give us another presentation in the near future as to how you manage to balance your property hat versus your chemical engineering hat. I think that would be quite interesting, especially for young professionals that look into having their own startups as well as venturing into other fields as well. So hopefully you take me up on that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'll give you the platform so you can go ahead and then share your presentation and take us through it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Wesley, for that. I prepared a presentation for you guys. I feel it would be the best way to share the information to you. So I'm not sure if it's screen sharing. Wesley, is it sharing the screen? Yeah.
It is just start the presentation.
Yeah, I've started it. So yeah, thank you so much for your invitation and that we could have a chance to speak about poverty and just find a way to make sure that as young professionals, we don't just, as we know, we'll be finding jobs, others are working, others are still in varsity. So it's a whole mixture of people here, and at the end of the day, we all need a roof over our heads. Whether you're an engineer or an accountant, at some point you need to buy a house. And much as we have training on our professions, majority of us don't have training on one of the biggest investments that we are about to make in our lives. And that would actually land one in trouble if you don't do things the right way. So just to start everything, my name is Ntato Rabushaka. I have a chemical engineering degree from Wits. I studied with Wesley, and after graduating, I worked as a process engineer. Then I also went to study in South Korea. I did my master's in nuclear power plant engineering, and then came back to work as a nuclear and cost engineer for various utility companies and research companies within South Africa and international. I worked at the Central Research Institute in South Korea, Dongdaegu. But now I'm based in South Africa in Pretoria. And it's surprising for most people that there's so few of nuclear engineers, and here I am dominating the space in the property industry, which just goes to show how much versatile chemical engineers are. We can literally do anything. If they give us a mechanical engineering job at work, we do it, and we do it very well. Electrical engineering, you just need to check a few things, do a few courses, and then you're fine. So that my background actually helped a lot. In today's presentation, I will be taking you guys through your primary residence, which is the house that you'll be living in, versus your buy-to-let. We'll be dealing in terms of the concept of location. You know, whenever you buy a house, they say the three most important things to focus on is location. But is it really the three most important things that one needs to focus on? Then we're looking into getting the best out of an estate agent. As you know, when you buy a property, you need to consult the services of an estate agent. Majority of times, you can't just contact the seller. So you need to understand as to how do you best get the best services out of this person. Then we're going to look into buying your first home. In this one, I'll be touching on a few key concepts for you guys, and also in terms of the financials. Majority of people cannot afford to buy a house cash. Now that you're buying it via a bond, what are the costs involved? How do you go about maximizing it and optimizing, and check all of those things. Also a small intro. I do work as a property analyst. I work as a property professional in the sales, rentals of properties. We also have Wealth Creation Network, which is a company that I'm the CEO of, and we do property investments. We start with kids from varsity. We're looking at young adults. It's basically a model that helps one to tap into the vast property industry. Our main focus is the bedroom market, which is worth 10 billion rands. But now majority of people are just living behind someone else's house. And the concept that came up with, we're actually building bachelor rooms in the township. So we're giving dignity to people at exactly the same costs. You will find a 30 to 35 meter squared bachelor pad with your own kitchen and your own ensuite bathroom for just 1,500. So that's us trying to transform the economy, trying to transform the industry, but most importantly, giving dignity to our people and our way of actually helping the state to help in all of this. So we'll be looking into your primary residence versus a buy-to-let property. This is one of the classical cases of property investing. Most people do not know that by the time you buy a property, it's an investment. And some would argue, is it a liability or an asset, irrespective of where it falls? That is an investment. And for some of us, it's going to be the biggest investment that one makes. So when you're looking into your primary residence, it is a liability, unfortunately. That investment is only going to get money out of you. You'll be paying for your rates and taxes. You'll be paying for your levies. You'll be paying for your bond. You'll be paying, like literally it's draining you money. So at the end of the month, you are not getting a single cent from this property. So it is a liability unto you. Anything that is a liability, you pay it off as soon as possible. So for your primary residence, we preach pay it off in 6 years. It's a simple concept. Think about it. When you buy a car, you buy a car for 6 years, and you're buying a Golf GTI, 600,000-700,000. But you buy a flat, a house for 500,000, and you want to pay it off for 20 years. The bank does not force you to pay it off over 20 years. The choice is absolutely up to you. A simple hack is pay extra 10% into your bond. Your bond is 5,000 a month. You pay an extra 500 rands. That bond reduces from 20 years to 15 years. Easy. Save up on 5 years. So there are many key concepts that one can look into, but what you need to know is that if it's your primary residence, make sure that you own it as soon as possible. Even an extra 1 rand, an extra 1 cent, it goes a long way, because remember, in your property, if it's financed, the interest is compounded daily, which means that whatever extra cent that you pay today will actually save you interest from now for the next 20 years. Now, we're looking into buy-to-let. Buy-to-let, that's an investment property. And for investment property, there are key concepts that one can look into. There's gearing, there's also OPM, which is called other people's money. The next slide, I will touch on this. For now, let's just park that. But when you're buying a buy-to-let property, that's a property that you are going to rent out. Most young professionals, when they start working, I want to own a property, so you buy a flat. You buy that flat, you stay in there for 2-3 years, then at some point you get married, you have a family, now you must vacate that flat, but then you put a tenant in. It's one of the most classical examples of property ownership. So most people do that. But once you do that, what you need to understand is that if that flat that you bought and now you have a tenant in it, if it's financed, for instance, you're paying 5,000 per month on your bond, interest rate is calculated on a sliding scale. What that means is that on your 5,000 month repayment, 4,999 in the first installment is purely interest. Basically, you've paid 1 rand towards your bond. The next month, same concept, but now you're paying an extra 10 rand. In the third month, extra 20 rands. Basically, in the first 7 years of owning your property, what you've paid off is merely interest. That is why whenever you have to settle your bond and say, I'm selling my property in 5 years' time, you find that you took a bond of 500,000 and you've only paid 10,000 rands towards it in 5 years. Simply because what the bank does is that they make sure to take all their interest in the first 10 years. So by the time you get to 10 years, the bank has their 500,000 back. Now you are starting on working on your property. But all that interest that you are paying in, you don't get taxed in. So when you calculate your EBITDA and you calculate your SARS tax that you need to pay, you'd find that the first 8 years, you are not going to pay any tax whatsoever, if you know your story. Then look at the income that you find from these two properties. It's simple. Your primary residence, as I said, it is an investment as much as it is a liability. The income that one gets from here is capital appreciation, which means that the the capital that you put in, the principal amount, you bought a flat for 500,000. In 20 years time, you want to sell this flat, it's now worth 1 million. Your capital appreciation is the amount of money that the property has gained over the years. So you bought it at 500,000, the rates and taxes, the transfer duties, everything that you paid into it were around 100,000. So your capital appreciation is actually 400,000. But when you're looking into a buy-to-let property, that's the one that you have a tenant in, it actually is twofold. And this is one of my favorite ones, because you have income as your cash flow. Every month the tenant pays you. So you have cash flow from the business, you have liquidity, you have money coming in. Then you also have capital appreciation, because the fact that there's a tenant in there does not mean that this property will not go up in value. So those are the two key concepts that you must look into. Whenever you have to invest in property, you have to decide from the onset, is it a buy-to-let or is it a primary residence? Because the concepts are not the same in terms of it. Remember, a buy-to-let, because you get tax clearances, you get tax exemptions, you're not going to pay it off in 5 years. But if it's your primary residence, you pay it off in 5 years, because there's nothing that you're going to get from there. It's just leaking. Now, I mentioned that we'll talk about the concept of gearing and the concept of other people's money. In terms of gearing, this is using a bond to finance purchasing your house. It's the example that I gave before then. So here's Ntato, he's buying his first property for 500,000. You buy only one property. After 20 years time, you have paid 1 million into this property. And the income that you get from this property is 5,000 monthly from one tenant, which means that you have all your eggs in one basket. If the tenant does not pay you, like now it's COVID, people are losing their jobs, people are not getting their full salaries, tenants are not paying. So you have 3, 6, 12 months of a tenant not paying you, and now there's a declaration that you cannot evict people. So you're gonna have 8 months of someone not paying your house. You may actually lose your house because someone is not paying. The best option to go about doing it is make sure that you have savings of minimum 3 months to 9 months of your repayments, meaning that you have 5,000 per month multiplied by 9. If your tenant doesn't pay in 9 months, you are fine, because you'll be paying it and you have that saved up. Then we're looking into Investor 2. This is my favorite way of investing, OPM. It's called other people's money. Basically, it's the same concept as gearing, but we don't borrow from the bank. We borrow from each other. There's 10 of us in a group. We are paying 5,000 per month towards our property for 10 months. In 10 months time, I've contributed 50,000. There's 10 of us contributing 50,000 each. This is 500,000. We buy the first flat cash. Then we put a tenant in there. In the next year, same concept, 5,000 per month for 10 months, 10 people. We buy the second flat cash. In 20 years time, we are going to have 20 properties that are fully paid up. If you lose your job, if something happens, if there's an uncertainty, or easiest thing is, what if 3 clients out of the 20 tenants do not pay? You are fine, because you have 17 other tenants that are paying well. Also, it's a diversification of risk. As much as one would say to me, but you don't fully own those properties. Yes, you own 10% stake in 20 different properties. It's like when you invest in shares, you're going to buy one share. If the price plummets, what are you going to do? You've lost all your money. So what you do is you invest in Apple, in Tesla, you invest in various different shares, you invest in ETFs, so that ultimately they balance off each other. When one falls, the other one picks it up. Next up, we'll be looking into the concept of location, location, location. This one has been used over and over and over and abused. Basically, what it means is when you're buying a property, you must look at buying it in the best location. For example, the best locations for rentals currently in South Africa for the past 5 years is Tembisa, followed by Centurion, followed by Soweto. So when you want to invest in properties for rentals, you look into these locations, because you understand that at these locations, there's a high number of people that are renting out. However, Harvard introduced a new concept now called timing, and this is crucial. Irrespective of the location that you invest in, the timing that you have in accessing the market is crucial. For example, Waterfall Country Estate here in Midrand is a great location. So in terms of location, perfect. However, in terms of timing, now that's key, because 5 years ago, a stand was selling for 500,000 then. Now you have a stand selling for minimum 2 million rands. The exact same location, different timing. Also, we're looking into, the government is trying to turn Lanseria into a city of the future. Whether that happens or not, well, I don't know. But if it does happen, Lanseria has very cheap stands now. Anyone, if you have money, look into that. I will not advise anyone to invest or not, but when that place booms, the guys who bought the stands very cheaply are going to make a lot of money. Now we're looking into getting the best out of an estate agent. It's very easy. Estate agents in South Africa and in the worldwide, there's a seller's agent and a buyer's agent. Most of the time, an estate agent plays 2 roles, but they don't know this. So what that means is, when a seller wants to sell their property, they go to an estate agent and signs a mandate to say, I mandate you to sell this property on my behalf. That makes this person a seller's agent. This agent has a fiduciary responsibility to the seller, meaning whenever a dispute happens between you and the seller, they will take the side of the seller because they were mandated by the seller. Now, if you're a buyer, what I would advise is look into using buyer's agent. I've done this role many, many times. Basically, you will be coming to me saying, Tato, I'm looking for a property and I want to buy in Midrand. My budget is 1 million. I'll go and source the best property for you, work with the seller's agent, and we make the deal happen. If there's any dispute, if anything happens that is wrong, then I will take your side. I will fight for you and ensure that you get the best out of this deal. Same thing as the seller's agent. They will fight for the seller, but you don't want to find yourself in a position where you think someone is your agent, but they are not. They actually have a fiduciary responsibility. They have a contract with the seller. You just happen to buy that property. Now, looking into time, I'll just make sure that I move quite swiftly. Cash is no longer king. Back in the days, you'd hear someone say, I want to buy a property, I have 1 million cash. It means nothing today. If you are pre-approved, you go to a bank, you're an engineer, you're earning a salary, and the bank says, we will give you a bond of 2 million rands, and they give you that pre-approval letter. You are actually having the same power as the person who's buying cash. So make sure that you understand these dynamics. Don't go and say, I want to save 2 million rands, then I will have the power. There's no power that you have above the person who just went to the bank and then they pre-approved them to say, we will give you a loan of 2 million rands as and when you need it. Now, let's look into the last segment of it, and it's the most important one, the true cost of purchasing a home. When you purchase a home, you can purchase 2 types of homes that I'm dealing with today. There's what we call a new development, then we look into an existing house. With a new development, this is where you hear all costs included. These costs are your transfer costs, these are your bond registration costs, these are your VAT transaction costs, these are your transfer duties. So when you buy into a new development, because the developer is registered for VAT, then you are not liable for transfer duty. Transfer duty is the tax that you pay to the taxman for buying a property. If you buy a property of 1 million and below, you will not pay any transfer duty. You are exempt from it. But when you're looking into an existing house, looking into the market now, that majority of the houses that are out there already exist. They have owners. So now, when you buy that type of property, you are liable for a lot of costs. This is arguably one of the most expensive ways to buy property. You are liable for transfer fees. These are lawyer fees for transferring the property from the seller to the buyer. Then you have bond registration fees. Because you're not buying this property cash, you are actually buying it with money from the bank. The bank needs to register a bond against your name at the deeds office. Attorneys do this job, and you actually have to pay bond registration attorneys for this money. Then you are liable for transfer duty for that tax. So if you buy a house of over 1 million rands, you need to pay that transfer duty to the taxman. Then you may be liable for VAT if you are buying from a company. For example, if you're buying an existing house from a company, this example shows a 1 million rand property. For a 1 million rand property bought from a company, you are going to pay 15% VAT. This is an extra 150,000 rands. Then you're going to pay 27,000 in transfer costs. You're going to pay 27,000 in bond registration costs. Ultimately, you're going to pay 1 million for the property, 150,000 rands for VAT, 55,000 rands for transfer fees. These are transfer costs for the attorneys, which means a house worth 1 million, you may buy it for 1.2 million rands without knowing it, because you didn't do your homework. You didn't check who is the seller. Are they a company? Am I liable for VAT? These are the questions that you need to ask, because these fees, you need to pay for them in cash. Then also we're looking into an example of buying an existing home from a natural person. Now this one is similar to the example above, but now you are not paying any VAT. As you see, the 1 million rand home, you take a 1 million bond, then you only pay 25,000 for transfer costs, you pay 25,000 for transfer fees, then ultimately you pay 1,050,000 rand for that property. But either way, you bought a house thinking it's 1 million rands. Now you are paying 1,050,000 rands. When you sell it in 5 years' time, make sure that you take into account the 50,000 rands that you paid into this home. The biggest mistake people make is to say, I bought this house for 1 million rands, now I'm selling it for 1 million rands, I'm breaking even. No, you are not. You actually lost 50,000 rands that you put into this property. So by the time you sell it, make sure that you take these costs into account. Just to respect time and make sure that we finish on time. Thank you guys so much. We'll find another platform to share other things with you. Thanks for your time, and over to you, Wesley.
Awesome. Thank you very much, for that awesome presentation. I'll actually open up the floor for any questions we have for Ntato as well as Refentse. So the first one for you, Ntato. The question is from Megan. The question is, I've heard of this property stokvel. Is the tax implication the same as if I were doing it on my own?
Yeah, it's a lovely question. I'm going to answer it the legal way and the illegal way. How you go about this. Looking into a property stokvel, majority of it is cash on hand. So it's not easy to track the money, where it's going, how it's going about. So sometimes even SARS cannot track that there's a money that's invested in other things. But in the legal manner, in terms of your tax implications, you will pay lesser, because remember, it's fractional ownership of the property. So in terms of income, if you own a property on your own, the whole income of it comes directly to you. But if you buy it through a property stokvel, then you're going to get only 10% of it. Also, one of the very key ways that can be used is that a property stokvel, like ours, what we do at the Wealth Creation Network, we've actually registered it as a business. Now, business tax is limited, is kept at 28%. So the business pays the taxes, then there are different ways in one getting their money. We can either issue dividends, or we can just give you a profit from the company. Now we've paid the taxes as a business, and now you just get your portion of this. But if you do it alone, then that money is going to be added on your PAYE. Then it may throw you into a higher tax bracket, leading you into trouble.
Awesome, thank you. The next question also for you then. It's from Gray Lane. So it says, great presentation. If I built a property portfolio, should I do this in a PTY LTD? And what do I use for collateral to get the portfolio?
Yeah, lovely question. The first property that you're going to own is 99% most likely going to be owned by you as an individual, simply because it is very difficult to get property under a company. Remember, just to clarify a bit, in terms of the South African law, a company is also a living being. A company is its own person. It has its own enterprise number. Now, if you are going to buy a property and need a bond, that own person, that own entity has to go to the bank representing itself. So basically, when you go to the bank and say, I want to buy this property as Ntato Pty Ltd, you're going to need financials of the company. not my financials. They don't care about my payslip. They don't care about the monies that of getting a bond, which is very, very much slim. That chance comes only if you have 3 years of books for the company that have been audited by a CA. The odds that a company that you've just registered now has 3 years worth of books that have been audited by a CA. So what we do is 1, 2, or 3 properties, you register them under your name. Now, as you start making money, as you start generating cash, you will make enough money to be able to buy your 4th property company. Now, in 2-3 years' time, that company is going to have a track record. How much money it's happening in terms of the taxes that it's paying. Now it's growing. It's get finance as a company. I know people who've had companies for 10 years. When they go there, actually, the banks are smart. They don't say no. Interest rate. You will say no by your own. So that's why we are focusing on property stokvels. What we do is we buy them cash as a group. Alone, I can't buy a property of 500,000 every year. But the 10 of us can actually do it and are doing it, and we're doing it very well. So look into such options. You don't necessarily have to do it alone. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Awesome. Thank you for the response, Tato. So I'll take one question for Refentse. Then what we'll do is any other further questions, I think we can respond them via email. So I guess that we promote engagement. So we continue engaging even after this session. So I definitely encourage everyone to continue engaging, especially in these areas that we've been discussing today. So the question for Refentse then is, what advice would you give to a student who has a bursary that focuses on an area that she's not particularly fond of, but still has to do their engineering training with them, though that shapes the rest of her career?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. You know, I think it goes back to what I had said, that in your first year of working, the intention is to learn as much as possible and to expose yourself to what's available. I think one thing you should never ever, I don't actually agree with, is that what you do in your first year shapes your career. That's not true. It contributes to your career. And one thing I can say is that with an EIT program or training, the intention is to equip you to actually be able to do a certain job, not a certain job, but it's there to assist, to give you the practical experience of what you learned in your tertiary. When you think about tertiary as well, the modules that you did, you would have thought that maybe it would have limited you in what you can do. And what Ntato said is so great about the fact that he's a chemical engineer, but he's moved more into property. So the skills you require will never ever be a waste. What you want to do is that in your EIT to do the best that you can, but don't ever feel that that will actually limit you, that will ever limit you in your career or direct you. What needs to happen is that within the years to come, once you're done with your EIT, start making decisions that move more into the direction that you want. So for me, the way the career path for my EIT had programmed or kind of planned out for me to go is for me to become a specialist. And as I explained in my talk, that me becoming a specialist is not something that I want to do. I knew that I want to move more into business development. So then what I started doing is that I excelled in my current job and what I'm expected, because always your intention is to add value to whatever position that you are in. And then thereafter, all the other opportunities, I raised my hand for them. And like I said, people really want to work from 9 to 5. So any other opportunities that are available, raise your hand, especially if you feel it's going to contribute to something that's bigger. But don't ever feel that what you're doing, especially in your first year of working, will ever direct you into a certain direction. Another thing as well that's very important, I must have mentioned earlier, which I didn't, is that with your career, you need to take control of it. I remember in my first job working, someone asked me, so what's your career plan? And I said, no, I'm following the EIT program. And they said, okay, that's a program that sets out for you. So you need to also remember that the company you work for, they just want you to do a certain thing. You need to plan your own career. And once you, like I said, once you're clear on what you need to do, all the opportunities that come up, all the things that become available, the things that you can end up studying will actually push you more into the direction that you want, but you are in control of your career, no one else. And if you're not in control of it, that's where now companies start to move you into a certain direction. But don't ever take for granted the things that you learn. In your head, you think that it's clear, this is what you want to do, but you'll see as you keep exposing yourself to all the different things, you actually start seeing, it becomes more clearer and the dots start to connect. So the dots will always connect. You just need to be clear, what is your next best position, and say yes to all the opportunities that come that are aligned with what you do.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Refentse. So we're going to wrap it up. We've hit the 7 p.m. mark. So what I'd like to encourage all the participants and attendees, Refentse is on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, same with Ntade as well. You'll find him on LinkedIn. So please go ahead and connect with them, especially if you feel there's some questions that haven't been addressed. But as I mentioned, all the unanswered questions will be responded to via email. So you'll definitely get feedback from that. A question on the presentation recording, that will also be made available, as well as Tato's presentation as well. That will also be made available to you attendees. So I'd like to encourage you all to join us again next week for another session. Most importantly, please invite your networks. Follow the YPC on LinkedIn, because that's where we tend to keep most of the updates going. And again, engage with the posts. That way we can get through your networks as well. Also, one more thing, if you feel you want to come through and give a presentation or a talk that inspires you and you feel might add value to the other young professionals, please feel free, contact us, contact Camila. That way we can start engaging and we can give you the platform to build your network. So everyone, thank you for attending, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you.
Bye.